making that decision unless there's some overarching public interest in keeping it on or off.
Well, I don't remember, and if he did, it's probably gone. I would feel more comfortable taking it off, you know, if there was a letter sent to the town formally requesting it of record, as opposed to him standing up and saying, I can't believe you put that on there, I want you to take it off.
Yeah, why don't we put it back on, and we'll tell John, if he really wants it off, get a petition up. He won't have any trouble getting signatures.
Well, no, I know he won't. I would feel more comfortable taking it off if he took ownership for getting it taken off.
Yeah, I mean, we thought he had done that, but no, yeah.
We're making decisions on someone's private property, I'm not sure.
Well, I know, so the decision was already made.
All the scenic resource road.
He made the decision a long time ago, quite clearly.
I would certainly think it's in the town's interest to have it documented from the owner.
Well, that's what I think too. I would like, if there's a letter that somebody presented to me right now, I feel perfectly comfortable taking it off. But I don't know of any written documentation from him, and I want to have a paper trail that goes back to John Williams. You know, not that the planning board arbitrarily decided to take it off.
Because we arbitrarily created that whole list anyway, or at least the comprehensive plan.
Right, I know.
Probably didn't get the minutes of the meeting that he spoke.
So all of those,
I have, I probably didn't.
all those 5 parcels, whatever, are privately owned.
Correct.
And were they, any of them, well,
No,
consulted? It was just
not officially.
you know,
And the tower was put on TID before the,
I would certainly suggest Mr. Williams should submit a letter on his desires, just if anything else, so there'd be a record copy of what.
I would feel more comfortable that way.
so let's put it back in, and just forget it for now.
Yep, sounds good.
Just there.
Okay, next.
Putting in the definition is fine, but still, what do you do with it after you put it in?
I think it does no harm to put it in, and it basically shows the planning board has recognized there's no, it begs the question, why not put it in?
Yeah, it's one of those things that one way matter, one way the
Yeah, it doesn't
other.
matter.
We used to have I can tell you that a couple of years ago, if you recall, we had a quote unquote a noise ordinance, and at I don't know, was it in that 2011 one that we took it out? There was at one of the town meetings in the spring, there was a big to-do about getting rid of it.
Well, no, wasn't there a big to-do about trying to pass a noise
Or
ordinance?
maybe that
Well,
was,
that's a criminal thing, though, that's a different thing.
they didn't want it.
I'm sorry?
The town didn't want it.
In fact, I think the people that were trying to get it in were close to being lynched.
I just when, I think early on, I think that you'd asked me to Google it or research it. And when I typed in definition of noise, it all popped up in all these sound studies. So, I mean, it's, sound studies mention it, but like
So what do we write down on what it sounded, and I can tell you, you're gonna get inundated with stuff, or I don't like chainsaws. Well, do you have a motorboat? Well, that's different.
I mean, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, but
As far as regulating it, I'm,
Because
because
of
of,
defining it, the question I think here is why don't we have a definition for it in the back?
yeah. Well, I know you just wrote in noise, but do we put in the definition, the standard definition, or do we just leave it out?
Personally, I like to see it out because unless, I don't know, I just know that we had a problem with it before. People didn't want it.
it's kind of in the weeds anyway. I mean, it's kind of.
Leave it out, but I'm either, I'm happy to do this.
I would say just leave it out, because we're not going to deal with a noise ordinance anyway.
Yeah, noise is really gets into
To be
criminal.
honest with you, the noise ordinances I've read are all different. Like there's noise ordinances for downtown areas, noise ordinances for rural areas, and you have to actually have, you know, a noise almost by zone a noise standard, or almost by road for a noise standard.
Yeah, and
In
on
fact, that's now I think of it, that's what I did find, there, that one out in, I forget, someplace out west I found, it was by street just about.
Well, where you can use jake brakes, they always have noise standards, so they have to get cited for noise violation for using the jake brake on certain roads in certain
Like the
jurisdictions.
sign over Bruce's house.
And the real problem with,
And
yeah, I
they-
hear it,
they crank when they
but the
drive
real
by my
problem
house.
with Jake brakes isn't the brake, it's the fact that the exhausts have been modified. In a proper exhaust, they're no louder than the exhaust.
If people understood what jake brakes really do, nobody would ever have a problem with a jake.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
If they understood how safe they made
Yes,
the roads.
well, that's what I mean, if they're done properly and maintained properly, a jake brake is better than the brakes on the truck.
Yeah, and it's actually no quieter than the exhaust.
That's right.
But I guarantee you, use jake brakes in Lubbock, Texas, you're gonna get a ticket.
Guess what, I'd be getting a ticket every time through there.
Anyway. Well, why don't you go through Lubbock, Texas anyway?
No kidding, I wouldn't. I've been there once, good enough.
But, no, but I'm just saying a jake brake is a,
Are you guys okay with that?
My daughter's moving to Lubbock, Texas.
Oh, my goodness.
That's what her husband got a
Lubbock,
job.
Texas, you're rock and roll, or it's, you got a nice little museum there for
Yeah, but there's basically nothing
them.
there.
Christmas Day, 20 years ago, my wife and I tried to find his grave at the cemetery.
Lubbock or Lufkin, I think it's Lubbock. Man, I have trouble remembering all the damn names.
Oh, it's impossible. I'd say it's very difficult. So actually, we can even add on here that the proposal deletes the +5 anyway, right? Is that correct, Bruce? Can we write that in there?
Deletes the +5, and it deletes the +10.
Just delete that.
Is that excursion or exclusion?
Excursion. You can excur up to 5 decibels over if it's, if your house is deemed loud. That's what I was saying earlier. So if you live on Route 9, it was probably 45 anyway. It's saying you could be 50, even though the standard might be 35 at somebody else's place in the woods. Now it's always 35.
Provided they can measure it.
Right, well, technically it's always 35.
Yes.
So that basically is the simple answer. It's,
The answer makes it.
right, it's a mute point.
Where was that answer?
Yeah, there's not gonna be any differences, they're all gonna be the same, they'll all be equally strict. Is that correct, Bruce?
That is correct, the exact same sound standards. Especially once I found out how loud the 50 and 100K ones were, and even the little 10K ones were.
I had no idea.
Is that posted to the,
No, it's just because Bruce just did it today.
I just finished.
It's
getting
gonna be up here in a few minutes.
no, I meant, I thought that answer said, was extensively answered at the last public, I guess I missed that part.
We did answer it after the last.
Yeah, if you went to the
meeting.
April 2nd meeting, you'd find an answer to it.
I don't believe so.
I can go back and check again at some point, but I'm pretty sure it was on the April 2nd answer. I thought it was. Maybe it was not up there somehow, but I'll check. But anyways, you pointing out, it's all the same. So I researched this, and basically there's not like in the state laws, the way I understood at that website, going through the whole state parameters for it, there's not like you don't go to like a marijuana treatment facility. You can treat, if you are prescribed marijuana in a nursing home, so you can't actually go get it, or in hospice where you can't go get it yourself, then you can get a caregiver's license and go buy it at the dispensary and then take it to the person who is at the hospice who can't go physically get it themselves. That's the way I understood the rules to be. So that's what the caregiver's license was. But there's not like a place where you go where they have like 5 beds and at the 5 it's a marijuana administration facility, so to speak, or whatever. That's not how I read it. And you can do it at your house or whatever. And the kind of the 2 classes of things are the dispensaries and the cultivation facilities. And cultivation facilities can actually, in some cases, be at a residence. So it can be like it could be essentially a home business. And I think there's like a number of plants you can grow. I forget the exact standard, whether it's you have to already have like a pre-customer base, and that drives how many plants you have or whatever. But there's rules about number of patients and number of plants and things like that. It's pretty heavily regulated for how that works. But it can technically be like a home business. But that's how that works. So this is the answer on quarries. I mean, I don't see any reason, to have a moratorium on quarries, and you have to have a moratorium hearing and everything else. The gravel pits are regulated at 2 different levels, at like 5 acres and below, and then above 5 acres. Whereas quarries, used to be a section for basically small roadside quarries and then big quarries, and they repealed the small ones, so all quarries are regulated the same. And the DEP standards, they look fairly strict to me. And the only thing I could see that we could add to it in the interim, if people are concerned, is just to enable the code enforcement officer to regulate the DEP, or to enforce the DEP rules, just in case the DEP wouldn't respond quickly enough. I mean, they should be out here and doing whatever they do if the code enforcement officer calls them. But if they didn't, all I think we should do is just empower Rick to enforce the rules as if they were our own. And that's all I tried to do. Now, if you read through the DEP standard on that, just to kind of clarify it for anybody who likes to go and do research, it talks about the fact that you can't have your own. You can't have, basically, it doesn't say this in the exact words, but I've dealt with this before. You can't be the prime regulator of quarries in your town unless you can demonstrate that you have the capability of doing the whole thing. So just by the fact that we're telling Rick that he can go and enforce the DEP rules as if they were our own is not the same as having primacy over quarries in your town. Just make that absolutely crystal clear. The DEP will still have primacy over quarries. That there's no intention or desire, from me anyways, to be the regulating authority for quarries in Clifton. If there are quarries in Clifton at some point. But I do think it's worthy of looking into, and I just think it'd be, since Eddington is gonna take all this time and go through all their litigation and whatever else they're gonna do, I just figure let them deal with that right now, and then we can figure it out after the fact. And
We'll see whether they can put
right, see what they come up with, and then see what the court likes for them, and then work with it, you know, or whatever, or try to address public concerns and whatnot from that perspective. That was my thought anyway, unless you have a different idea. Come on. Okay, we'll go a different way. No, I can't go a different way. Save as. Okay, we'll go there. It won't recognize mine the same way it recognizes yours. Where's my other one? Oh, I know why. Because yours is like a Word 97 document. And here's the
You were able to make changes.
I know. Your documents are not that friendly.
Word 2000, I don't want to spend the money for Word 2013.
Okay.
We're gonna have to.
At some point, you're gonna have to suck it up, buttercup.
2000 just works so good, most of the time.
Can I make a couple quick comments before we move on, or?
We're hoping to try to
Okay.
minimize that. If you note yourself at the end, so we can get through this. So this was like the next set of comments. First question. This was a pretty long answer.
The only questions or any real, I realize the point of the second half of the response, but is really adding anything to the debate.
Starting where?
In response, have to ask,
Oh, that part.
yeah, that, I mean, it's, I can understand.
Well, basically, they're pointing out an inconsistency, but they wanted to just dwell on one inconsistency. Or inconsistencies only when it comes to limit.
Well, I'm not arguing the point, I'm just saying it's really, very added, and I certainly, you
Yeah.
know, if y'all feel,
Or we could just take,
uh,
take it out, but,
So you're talking about taking it out from there to the bottom, Dave,
well,
or what?
I'm
what do
just,
you-
I'm just raising the question, because when I first read this, I'm not, it,
yeah, well, take it out.
I don't wanna, you know, feel. just-
Well, no, this is,
I'm not
the
objecting
purpose
to
of
it.
this was that Bruce wrote a proposed response, and the reason that response isn't posted is because I wanna have, this is not Bruce's response, this is the board's response, so, you know, granted, people's personal opinions or whatever, or personalities are gonna come through in this. The point of having the discussion here, bringing this up on the screen is to, you know, to try to make a board personality, not, you know, individual personality on this answer.
I guess the only thing I would say I can, go with, but is, it raises valid questions, I'm not arguing that point, it just doesn't answer it.
Take it out then, because the gist of it is, it's a choice.
So,
And there's not gonna be no choices. to
or
satisfy everyone.
paraphrase and say, we have to make a lot of difficult choices based on competing, kind of do that earlier, but,
Or simply say that
it
there
gets into a
are,
lot of little detail that
right,
I'm not sure, it serves a valid purpose, don't get me wrong, but it gets into a lot of detail that may be,
Well, how about we just delete that whole
Yeah.
section, okay?
well, don't go too.
Well, hang on, no, I can hit the undo button, just be patient. I just wanna rewrite it here and then see if you like just the look of it. No choice to be perfect. And then
For
just
those
change.
of us with shorter attention spans and fading eyesight,
well, that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what, I'm looking at a big view, I apologize, I should have done it before.
And you could simply say as well,
I'm not a spring chicken anymore.
Okay, I got you.
is filled with inconsistencies.
There, I apologize. Okay, how's that look? There, I should have been looking at the screen.
I think your last paragraph, where it's a choice, and it's competing factions or competing priorities, and I think that's a good
The
summary.
LEO was
That's a great
filled
summary.
with them.
I'm sorry?
The LEO was filled with them.
So is this answer okay with the group?
I agree.
All right, next question.
And the real question is, should we increase the setback from a non-participating property line?
I mean, to me, if we're only talking right now about the safety setbacks from the thing falling down or whatever, I mean, I feel like 2 times the tower height is enough. And if most studies, empirical studies indicate that the wind throw is within, 500 feet, I don't see why we should, create these giant barriers. That has nothing to do though with trying to go back to talk to Dave's issue of earlier of sound and distance. Just, this is an independent
This is
discussion.
supposed to be strictly the safety setbacks.
Right, I know, I just wanna make sure that we understand that. I mean, Vernon, you did a lot of electrical work out in Alaska, you must have worked in some high places, right?
Well, I sent people that didn't
I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel for, when you're working high and things like that from a construction perspective or whatever, I mean, this 2 times seem like a reasonable number from a contracting perspective when you're doing the work.
Yeah, I would think it's reasonable.
Can we answer the question better? I mean, I don't know, are we?
I agree.
Is it much different than the state putting an embankment on my property that I pay taxes on?
No, they didn't even give you any money for it, did they?
They didn't give me enough to pay for the trees, the firewood that I lost out of it.
Okay, so this is that comment from Judge Ward. This is what we're gonna touch on, that question that you asked earlier.
Okay.
Okay. So essentially what we're saying here is, you know, we know that you can't do it because we have had multiple technical people tell us that you can't do it, and there's no evidence that's ever been done anywhere, you know, to the standard that we have written. So anyway, what the judge, I mean, I understand what the judge did. This is what the judge's perspective is. He feels the court system should be the purveyor of what's constitutional and what's not constitutional, and that authority shouldn't be disseminated down to planning boards. So in order for him to basically have a foundation for his opinion, you know, he had to construct the situation, you know, that it was, you know, a doable item, okay, because he's trying to prove that a planning board shouldn't have the authority to make that decision. That's his legal perspective on the matter. But then later on, he goes through and he talks about how, you know, that there were flaws in it, and he told us that we need to get it fixed, but he just said that you can't fix it, you know, in situ. You have to stop your process, fix it, and restart your process. That's what I heard him say, that you can't do it on the fly like we did. So he's not saying, in my opinion, that this is this giant thing that you have to do, because it's possible, because it's not.
You said it was in there, you can't waive it.
Right. Well, the other thing is he took it to be a performance requirement versus a submission requirement, which is like another whole problem altogether, which planning boards are entitled to waive submission requirements according to state law. However, they're not allowed to waive performance requirements.
In the same way that an appeals board can grant dimensional variances, but they can't grant performance variances.
Correct.
In fact, they're strictly limited.
So if they said your foundation has to be 3,000 PSI concrete, you can't change that. But if the requirement was you have to present a plan that shows you're going to use 3,000 PSI concrete, you can say, well, you don't have to show that. You just have to. But I can't can't say you can use 2,000 PSI concrete. I can't do that.
Well, if the 3,000 is impossible to do.
Right. And then you have to go to court to get that straightened out. Small piece.
Clifton is misspelled.
Oh, yeah. Bruce.
I didn't know we moved.
Leon, you guys are okay with that answer to the first question? Okay. You guys good?
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Do the proposed provisions, etc. That's just pretty straightforward. That's kind of the concept, what the map's supposed to do. That's why you just can't
And
use
that's why
that.
they're not nice smooth curves. They do take all that into account.
I have more questions, I forgot about that. Question. So what I try to do on the procedures I wrote, which hopefully will work, one of the things that we focused on when we were trying to write it in the first place was, we were concerned that the process was going to be too many opportunities for people to drag their heels and that we wouldn't be responsive enough to people, which that in hindsight, maybe for a small project you want to be responsive, but for a big project you probably don't need to be so responsive, especially if you're a small town. So that hurt us because everything was under pressure. So what I tried to do is I extended the time intervals out and I built gates where we have to have actual votes instead of just kind of keeping notes, which is kind of how it happened before. So I created, in order to have a waiver, you can't just have it in your meeting minutes that you did. You have to actually stop, have a vote, have a document, provide a document to an applicant, etc. I mean, it's very bureaucratic, but it slows things down. And also, so that when you're doing the determinations and things like that, that people, there's a definite opening and a definite closing, and then if you have to reopen the submission part, then interveners can respond to it, and it's very laborious, but it makes sure that everybody gets their piece in, and there's a document trail of open and closed gates and things, and it's very compartmentalized versus the way it is we did it before. Part of the problem we have is very unclear if you're reading the proceedings from the entire review. It's unclear when things started and stopped. So, even though I disagree with what the conclusion the judge came to, by the time you get done reading however many thousand pages everybody's photocopies of everything were, it probably is very difficult to actually, put together a wire diagram for what happened first, second, and third. So I try to make discrete points for that in here to avoid those problems in the future. So that's why I answered that the way I did. And we've already answered the Woodchuck Hill one. Just add in here.
Jill, the woodchuck.
Jill, Jack and Jill went up the hill.
Haven't met her.
I mean, to me, and like you said, Dave, earlier about an answer to one of the other questions, maybe the last sentence doesn't really add a lot of value, but I mean, these sort of pointed, or not really pointed, these sort of speculative questions, kind of almost pointing to the planning board as doing something. I don't know what this something is. Is not good for anybody. And definitely isn't the case. I mean, that's why I said, just because we put an adult entertainment ordinance in there, 3 years or 4 or 5 years ago, we weren't thinking, oh my God, it'll be good to have adult entertainment in town. But adult entertainment was an issue regionally at the time, and so we felt it be prudent to ensure that it was in there. Just like marijuana dispensaries and these other sorts of operations are becoming to be a little bit more ubiquitous, and I want to make sure that we have something, in case somebody comes to town to do something like this, because one of the pushes is, well, you're having all these drug problems in rural areas. People are pissed off because, 4 people are getting into a taxi cab to drive into the methadone clinic or whatever. And so I'm worried that the response to that will be, oh, well, we'll put methadone clinics out in the rural areas. And then I just don't want to have, people responding to that and coming out here to do it and then not having anything in place. I'm certainly not promoting methadone clinics in Clifton. I'm just trying to be prudent. So just because you're talking about an ordinance, to me, doesn't mean that you're trying to do something, as this question implies, but if you think I should take the last sentence out, I'm good with that, Dave.
Scroll down.
Yeah, okay.
Scroll down.
Yay, nay? Gerald,
What's that?
you okay with this answer?
Yes.
All right.
Next time, take the other hunter, I'll make it quicker.
You need to be over here somewhere one of us can kick you.
The answer is, I think that was it. Was that right? Bruce? I don't think I don't think that Bill's statement had any questions in it, so I don't think we have to answer it. That's that. This. And then, as Paul didn't bring his isochrone map with him, so there. So I guess we download those files. Bruce, do you want to spend? You know what? I'll tell you what we'll do, because we'll take a little bit of a break here, because Jared wanted to say something that's kind of right, like a kind of breaking point anyway. So Jared, what do you want to say?
Well, I guess a little bit of having a little bit of frustration. I thought we had a land use ordinance, specifically sound standards in particular for the wind energy facilities, that we were discussing at the previous public meeting. Now I'm kind of under the impression that whatever we thought was the proposed land use ordinance is not. And so, one of the answers kind of highlighted that, where I asked a question about the 35 dBA plus 5, or the ambient plus 5 dBA. And the answer basically said, well, we're taking that out anyways. And it almost like, where are you getting such an idea? Well, it's from the land use ordinance that we were having a public hearing about.
Well, Bruce, I think we posted something up there that people looked at, and actually a lot of people didn't like it, what he already had posted. So actually what Bruce came up with in the last couple weeks, partially based on what Dave Hesper told him, and also based on some public comments and sentiment, is what Bruce is now proposing, on the sound side. We saw, obviously we had the distance discussion, but on the sound alone, is more restrictive, even more restrictive than what we have posted right now.
No, and I'm not arguing whether it's too restrictive, not restrictive enough. I had comments based on what I read the ordinance to read online, and now it's not what was posted online. So
Well, right. Actually, Teresa's son, last week, your son asked that question. Your son asked the question, well, so if it's 45, does that mean it's going to be 50? He asked the question last week, and then we told him last week. Bruce actually mentioned that it was probably going to go away last week at the hearing. He actually asked that specific question.
Yeah.
So, I understand what you're saying. You shouldn't be feeling bad about it. In fact, you should feel like, oh, well, good, they're going to get rid of it. I'm hoping.
Yeah, no, and I am. I agree that.
I'm going to just, you don't have to keep your hand up there. I'm okay with that.
No, and I do agree with that decision. It's just, like I said, I guess the response to that question in particular, I thought the first response kind of missed what the question was about, and that's your response, and that's fine. And maybe I should have worded the question a little bit more clearly, because my intent was, why are we allowing the +5, which is no longer the case? So it's a moot point, but
I see what you mean. Actually, you know what? Because we hadn't actually looked at the small wind turbines issue, and because you asked that issue 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, that's when we started even thinking about the +5 decibel issue. And Bruce had mentioned that that's a problem. Okay, and he went and researched it and said that actually those 100 kW wind turbines use the old technology and have a new technology which made them even noisier than the industrial wind turbines, which is an issue.
Mhm.
I mean, theoretically they're lower, so maybe they wouldn't go as far, but anyway, still it's an issue. And the +5 thing, you know, that actually all came about, you know, probably 50% of that came about because of your question 3 weeks ago. So I mean, we're being responsible.
No, and I'm not trying to.
Oh
say
yeah, well, I'm
anything-
just telling you, I mean, it takes time, we're doing this full time to come to this stuff.
No, and I understand that. Like I said, absolutely these things take time, and you guys have been at this a long time, and certainly way more in depth than I am. So my understanding of this is, you know, I read something, and anyways, it's my
Right.
point. About the small wind energy systems under 100 kW, assuming that they will all have the same standards, or all under the same ordinance now. Would the guy on corner of Brukoff and Route 9 therefore be non-conforming, or would somebody want, I don't know if anybody here has seen
Well, I
that.
think there's another standard down below that, which is a 10 kW and lower.
No,
Okay,
we
'cause
don't have a separate standard lower.
we
So-
did.
No, we never had 3, we've only always had 2.
No, there's a third one in there.
No, there isn't.
I'll go look it up.
Other ordinances do, I don't think ours has ever had 3. Some ordinances have 4.
I'm pretty sure it says if it's under 10, I don't know, I'll have to go, keep talking, I'll look it up. There's a one under 10
But
kW. I think it's probably like 2
unfortunately,
kW.
he would be grandfathered.
Right, but I just wanted to.
Well, I know, but
It's an
I'm,
issue.
Bruce, I'm pretty sure there's like under 10 kW. Today.
I agree with you, Bruce.
What's wrong?
And I will tell you, there have been, until I started cleaning out ordinances today, 32 versions of Article 14.
And there's still not a current,
There is a current version and a lot of those versions were being written after comments from people trying to address things, and Mr. Hessler was much later getting back to us than we hoped.
well, that letter was sent to him on the 27th, 2 days before the first public hearing, is that correct?
I'd have to look up the exact date, yeah, it was right close to there. So a lot of the present changes have been done only in the last couple of weeks based on his input, and also from his input and going and looking at sources that I got pointed to from it, including the when it came to doing some of the compliance work, looking at that report that Bill found for Freedom